Welcome to uBook channel. Read and listen to the greatest stories that mankind has ever told. From Iliad to COVID terror, and other famous classics. Enjoy the best world literatures throughout history.
COVID terror. Copyright 2021 by Gerry de Cadiz. All rights reserved. A unified Al-Qaeda and Islamic State took advantage of the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic in reinvigorating its jihadist cause for dominance and the reestablishment of a caliphate. World Health Organization Director General, Dr. Tedros Adhanom Ghebreyesus, said, "A virus is more powerful in creating political, economic, and social upheaval than any terrorist attack. Can have more powerful consequences than any terrorist action."
COVID terror. Chapter 11.
Colosio Pulviner, Rome, Italy. January 29, 2020. Emperor Caesar Vespasian Augustus ordered a new amphitheater to be made from spoils. An abbreviated version of the dedicatory inscription is what remains of the amphitheater's large inaugural epigraph. Named in Latin as Amphitheatrum Flavium, the Colosseum is a testament of the engineering ingenuity of the Romans, which subsequently became the chief highlights of the Eternal City. With a height of 45.5 meters, it was originally designed and constructed starting in 70 AD as a four-floor edifice, with an extension that includes an elliptical area of about 19,000 square meters. Holding up to 80,000 spectators, it was used for gladiatorial contests and public spectacles, such as reenactments of famous battles, animal hunts, mock sea fights, Christian executions, and dramas based on Roman mythology. Funding for the construction of this massive structure requires a huge amount of money, and it came through Vespasian's reform of the financial system, as well as various spoils and tributes coming from the neutralization of Judea, and the empire's expansion in Britain. A bespectacled lady in mid-40s was sitting for about a quarter of an hour in the Pulviner, the emperor platform with a private underground passage, originally intended for the security of Augustus Caesar. Dressed in an elegant yet effortlessly chic Italian style for a colder month, she seems to be enjoying the historical landmark, with the throng of multinational tourists roaming around the Colosseum. Nobody noticed anything unusual of the lady with a mixed Arab-Oriental feature, who can easily be mistaken as a typical professor from the nearby University of Notre Dame, Rome Global Gateway, just trying to relax after an exhaustive lecture on the history of imperial dominance in the Mediterranean. Sixie smiled inwardly. Assuming a new persona as Dr. Cindy Grimwood, she just called Ahmed to thank him of the business class flight when she escaped the lockdown in Wuhan a week ago. "I cannot thank you enough for bringing me out from that stony cold city." Recalling her exodus, the immigration official simply glanced at the face and signature of the opened passport, and verified the flight schedule in the ticket. With the gathering crowd, they hurried in their tasks. Fan was right, about 10 persons in line behind her, the gate was closed and a squad of PAP troops enforced crowd control, and served as human cordon. You may take your time while in Roma. Try to enjoy its grandeur and the cosmopolitan atmosphere of one of the most alluring capital cities in the world. Ahmed sounds cheerful across the Atlantic. "I'm enjoying myself here except for this disguise. But I'm not complaining." She has to be used to this 3D mask and crowd blending whenever she goes. Ellie cannot risk be identified in a CCTV at public places. It's been 3 months already that an international manhunt operation by Interpol was launched for the capture of Dr. Amira Siddiqui, and the retrieval of Virus X, the etiological cause of the recently known disease COVID-19. Time flies so fast in Rome. She got a superb accommodation at the Hotel Hostler Roma at Piazza della Trinita dei Monti, a place very convenient to any tourist who would want to see the famous locations that you oftentimes saw in Hollywood movies. While checked in, she always made sure to soak herself in its well-known spa and hot tub. Foregoing the best wines in the bar, she satisfied her gastronomic compulsion in partaking the splendid haute cuisine that a European 5-star hotel can offer. "Signora, you left your beauty kits and pouch in the room." A chambermaid hurriedly handed her the items. She was about to go out from the hotel, on the way to the Vatican City. "Grazie." Giving her a smile of gratitude and a €5 note as tip, Ellie took the items, and immediately placed it inside her Louis Vuitton Alma bag. "Could you please tell the driver to wait for a while? I need to have a retouch." She gave the hotel porter a knowing smile, and hurriedly went to the washroom. In her week-long stay here, the staff had known her as a generous guest. Ellie immediately closed tightly the glass metallic case of her L'Oréal Paris True Match Pressed Powder Foundation. After Sharifia bought it from a chic boutique in Beijing, Jian added a magnetic airproof and self-locking seal, for added safety and guard against accidental opening. Days before the MSS raid in Henan, Sixi had perfected the tissue culture of virus X. She propagated the virus through fashionable cosmetic products, inoculated with SARS-CoV-2. The case of her powder foundation, the same with the other containers for her lipstick, eyeliner, and other makeup kits, were redesigned as portable viral transport media, which conveniently passes through any security checks at the airport, or in any other transportation system. She's a field researcher that is true to form, and today is for her most prized final destination in the city. The Forum Sancti Petri is a large plaza located directly in front of St. Peter's Basilica in the Vatican City, the papal enclave inside Rome, directly west of the neighborhood or Ryan of Borgo. According to the schedule released by the Prefettura Casa Pontificia, there will be a papal audience at 10 o'clock in the morning in St. Peter's Square. It is expected that at least 80,000 devout Christians and media staff from almost all countries in the world will be tightly packed. In the plaza, the hotel had pre-booked a ticket for her that was picked up yesterday by a staff from the Swiss Guards at the bronze doors. The Argentinian Jesuit Jorge Mario Bergoglio descended the entrance stairs of Basilica Papale di San Pietro in Vaticano. Accompanied by an entourage of cardinals, priests, nuns, and other religious personages, he took his time traversing the marble steps. The day is not so cold and the crowd started chanting, "Papa Francesco, ti vogliamo bene." He readied himself to meet the faithful. As the Supreme Pontiff of the Roman Catholic Church, and sovereign head of the Vatican City State, the Pope commands the 1.2 billion Catholics. About another billion of Christians in various denominations, are part also of the ecumenical brotherhood or oneness in Christ. He was helped getting into the Pope Mobile, by non-uniformed Swiss guards. At 83 years old, he seems to be strong for his age. Showing off his signature street-smart smile that religious faithful throughout the world loved so much, the crowd were animated as the general audience commenced. His Holiness Pope Francis addressed the multitude in different languages. He gave a themed speech, this time, about being strong in faith to Christi and adherence to the Church, amidst the challenge of the reported SARS-related disease, that is spreading quickly from China to other countries. He intoned a prayer and a solemn appeal to all the faithful. This crisis is a difficult time for everyone. Let us try, if we can, to make the best use of this time. Let us be generous, let us help those in need in our neighborhood. Let us look out for the loneliest people, perhaps by telephone or social networks. Let us pray to the Lord for those who are in difficulty in Italy and in the world. Even if we are isolated, thought and spirit can go far with the creativity of love. This is what we need today, the creativity of love. A homily followed, and some singing lead by the Coro della Cappella Musicale Pontificia Sistina. Before going through the crowd, the Pope blessed the babies that the people hold up for him. Ellie was lucky to have a ticket for a spot near the Vatican obelisk. The 41-meter uninscribed Egyptian red granite structure is surmounted by the Chigi arms in bronze and supported by bronze lions, with a cross on its top. From this location, she has a good view of the trapezoidal entrance to the basilica, and the massive elliptical area. Just like what she did at the Colosseum, and in other public places in the last few days, she took out her cosmetic kits, and in the guise of putting on something to her face, but changing her mind halfway through, she threw away the powder in areas that people oftentimes touched. In this plaza, it's usually the metal railings that serve as barrier in the crowd. As customary among visitors, she went inside many gift shops, and touched any objects that shoppers would try to bargain and scrutinize. In public transportation and jam-packed places, she would spray her hands with something like an alcohol. In all of these instances, she always ensures that the N95 mask fits snugly beneath a fashionable face mask. She's also conscious that her hands must not go higher than her chest. When everything has been done satisfactorily, she would always proceed to the washroom, and carefully discard the skin-toned surgical gloves and disposable mittens. Any exposed skin of her body, including her neck and head, is rinsed with alcohol solution, and washed thoroughly with antibacterial medical soap. In the privacy of her room, the 3D mask and all her attire will be soaked in disinfectant, before it can be used again. The final regimen is to dry herself and kemp her short hair. All in a day's work, the Pakistani neuroscientist smiled with satisfaction, as she hailed a taxi back to her hotel. Bonjour. It's nice to see you again. Gwen's gladness can't be hidden upon seeing Sage in video chat. Hi. I thought I'd call you, just to know if you're okay. Nice background you got there. Sage was referring to the view, with the Eiffel Tower in her background. It's mid-afternoon in Paris, and in a fine day like this, many would have one thing in mind, a coffee break by the Seine. Yup, that's the reason why everyone wants to visit Paris, to see that majestic tower in Champ de Mars. Let's have drinks. With a very lovely smile, she raised her cup, and focused the phone's camera for Sage to see. She's having an noisette, a cafe with a drop of milk, at the Au Vieux Châtelet. It would have been nice to take a river cruise, but she will only do that if somebody is around with her. Her psychiatrist once said that she has an aquaphobia, an irrational fear and excessive amount of anxiety, for any source of water that doesn't even cause much danger. It's 10 o'clock in the evening in Tokyo. We're just done with a late-night meeting, about this request of the United Nations, for us to prepare policy papers related to the COVID-19 disease. Sage background is the conference room, in the 5th floor of the United Nations University. She read an article in Time magazine written by Professor Sean Gabriel Fitzgerald, about estimating the probable impact of a coronavirus pandemic to the social, economic, and environmental complexity on various countries, that threatens to undermine the UN Sustainable Development Goal of ending poverty by 2030. The same article was the basis also, of a short documentary film that was shown in major channels worldwide. Gwen recalled her last conversation. You said you have a paper presentation in Erasmus University this month. Are you going to pass by Paris? I will find time. I haven't visited the place for a year now. Sage was requested before as an expert panelist, during an international conference on sustainable development sponsored by France's École Polytechnique. She insisted, please do. It's only a 1 hour and 15 minutes direct flight from Rotterdam to Paris. Okay, I will have to change my itinerary. You had booked and arranged already my flight details. She thought of inviting him for a lovely tour of the Louvre Museum, Seine River cruise, plus lunch on the Eiffel Tower. This could be a way of thanking him, for saving her from being abducted when she was in China. By the way, you should always be careful. Sage suddenly changed the topic. No need to remind me. I still shiver every time I thought of what I've gone through at the market. Gwen learned from the trooper Lu that it was Sage who requested the Ministry of State Security, through the Wuhan Institute of Virology, to provide a security escort while she was in Wuhan. Although the setup should be that the agent will make sure that the scientist is unaware of its presence, so she won't be intimidated or felt hindered in her activities. Lu was following Gwen when the attempted abduction incident in Wuhan happened. There was an intelligence report from CIA that the disgraced PLA general may still have some supporters who are capable of doing violence to those whom they think are responsible for the downfall of their powerful and wealthy benefactor. I will return to the front lines after my recovery from this malady. Dr. Li Wenliang posted in his Sina Weibo online account. It's been 2 weeks already that he was admitted to the intensive care unit of the hospital, where he was quarantined, treated, and tested for SARS-CoV-2 several times. I feel like my colleagues are just making fun of me, with all these tests and diagnosis. He messaged a classmate in medical school. Just be patient. The 14 days incubation period that the WHO recommended to monitor contacts of confirmed cases is almost over. You'll be discharged very soon, came the reply. Incubation period refers to the time between exposure of a person to an infection and the appearance of the first symptoms. From the time he posted on social media the discovery of patients with severe pneumonia due to SARS coronavirus, Dr. Li became an international celebrity. But in doing so, he got the ire of investigators from the Wuhan Public Security Bureau, who censured him for making false comments on the internet. He was warned that if he failed to learn from the admonition and continued to violate the law, he would be prosecuted. The caller gave him a friendly advice. Don't be doing anything silly this time. Your affiliation might be revoked. Wenliang is a member of the Chinese Communist Party. A professional, who is associated with the ruling and only legitimate political party in China, will always have a lot of opportunities for advancement in his or her career. I guess it's too late. Along with the letter of admonition that he was forced to sign by the authorities, he wrote also a narrative of his dreadful experience at the police station, and published it on social media. The post went viral, and thousands of users questioned why Dr. Li and other doctors, who gave earlier warnings about the virus outbreak, were muzzled by the authorities.
During the first week of January, a storekeeper at Huanan Seafood Market, suffering from acute angle closure glaucoma, consulted with Dr. Li at the Wuhan Central Hospital. It was observed that the patient developed a fever the next day, so Li suspected that the man might have a coronavirus infection. 3 days later, the doctor developed a fever and cough which soon became severe. Although a fellow physician opined that most young patients do not tend to develop severe conditions, the glaucoma patient might have a high viral load, which exacerbated Wenliang's infection.
The door to Li's isolation room opened. Dr. Yu Huichang came in holding a piece of paper. With a sad face and a nod, she simply gave it to Li and left right away. Dr. Li Wenliang tested positive for the infection, and was diagnosed with the virus the next day. I can't go home for a while. Please take good care of yourself and our boy. Li phoned in his wife. You better not worry for us. You must get well soon for our incoming baby. Fu Sueja is crying on the other line. She is pregnant with their second child, and is expected to deliver very soon. I'm feeling good. We'll get through this. He lied to his wife. Li felt various symptoms of the virus. But he is determined to survive on this disease. It did not help when the Chinese Supreme People's Court vindicated the actions of Li, in exposing online the health emergency by saying that the Wuhan citizens should not have been punished, as what they said was not entirely false. Through a post in social media, the judiciary seems apologetic. It might have been a fortunate thing if the public had believed the rumors then, and started to wear masks and carry out sanitization measures, and avoid the wild animal market. In an interview with an investigative journalist from Cakeson Global, Lee said that he had been worried the hospital where he worked would punish him for spreading rumors, but felt relieved after the country's top court publicly criticized his antagonists. The brave ophthalmologist gave his piece of thought on the issue of freedom of speech. "I think there should be more than one voice in a healthy society, and I don't approve of using public power for excessive interference." A nurse aide assists patients with their daily activities, maintains patient hygiene, and serves a vital role on the healthcare team. In other words, they are the all-around hands, who were expected to perform the odd and menial jobs inside the medical wards that physicians and nurses got no time to do. After the government acknowledged the outbreak of the SARS-CoV-2 virus in Wuhan, healthcare facilities were burdened with the influx of probable cases. Many were tested to be positive of the infection. At Wuhan Central Hospital, the supervision department hired additional workers to cater to the demand of increasing number of patients related to the coronavirus. A nurse aide could be seen entering the ward with a caption on its door, 2019 nCoV. Wearing a complete PPE against infection, similar with the other health workers, his face cannot be distinguished. But the guard on duty noted that this man could be a newly hired employee, after he showed an ID card that bears the current year in the serial number. He paused by the door and scanned the patients inside. With a purposeful stride, he approached the bed nearest to the window. He cannot be mistaken, the face of this patient is always seen on TV and social media every day. Dr. Li Wenliang appears to be asleep. But it's obvious that he is experiencing difficulty in breathing. The nasal interface mask connected to a non-invasive ventilation machine has been fitted to his face, covering the mouth and nose. Another set of medical equipment is attached to the body to keep the patient alive due to his critical health condition. Related life support system instruments are humming in their regular rhythm, indicating the measure of vital signs on temperature, respiratory rate, heart rate, blood pressure, and oxygen saturation. An intravenous catheter is a small, flexible tube designed to deliver IV medications and fluids to the patient. Taking hold of the Y-type injection port, the nurse aide injected something into the closed-type catheter system from a syringe filled with a golden crystal liquid. The man meticulously surveyed the bed and instruments, then checked that the IV catheter is in proper position, and the fluid from the attached bottle of dextrose solution is flowing as expected. Satisfied of what he did, and after taking a second look at the patient, he went out from the ward. The doffing room runs adjacent to the 2019 nCoV ward. The nurse aide took off his PPE in the manner as prescribed by health authorities. Discarding everything but the syringe, he went to the shower room, did a good rinsing of the exposed parts of his body, then put on his civilian attire. He exited the door at the end of the hall. "It's a perfect job," he thought. He actually excelled in this kind of work. He learned his craft from training and experience, when he was still active with the MSS as a member of its wet squad, the liquidation and death unit of the country's primary intelligence agency. Aside from data gathering, misinformation, and sabotage, he's usually contracted to assassinate high-value targets. He felt elated with today's mission. He did what was ordered. The advance payment is more than enough for him to last for some months, even in a lockdown. The good news came in earlier from an overseas call. After this assignment, he was told to be ready for a more valuable mission. The initial task is to prepare the logistics and support operations for the arrival of a team on some projects in China. 100 meters from the gate, his car was parked near the exit, for easy escape if necessary. He half expected a failure. But so far, everything seems to be happening according to his plan. Maybe because of the chaos which ensued due to the virus outbreak, nobody minded anyone else, except his or her own affairs. He continued walking in the hospital's deserted parking lot. He was about to board through the driver's door, when a searing hot slug entered his forehead, and exploded in double action that shattered his cranium, with the brain and whatever are in his head showering in all directions. "Sorry sir, it's my job," Lou said silently to the headless body, leaning by the opened door of a blood-splattered black Land Cruiser. The barrel of an AT-308 sniper rifle she had shouldered is still hot, where a single .338 Lapua Magnum bullet exited. Junior MSS agents began converging on the scene to avoid civilians, or any bystander, to witness what happened. An ambulance is on the way, to bring the cadaver to the hospital morgue for proper disposal. Mr. Fan has been her instructor at the MSS Snipers School. She was able to master his tactics in counter-surveillance, that became in handy recently. When he began associating himself with General Gu some years back, he had gone rogue, so the Chinese intelligence service had to consider him as retired, but dangerous. Lu Chi had been following him, ever since their encounter at the Huanan seafood market. The Filipina scientist was fortunate enough, that the snow leopard was able to arrive on time. The pangolin vendor was not as lucky. He was no match to the martial arts and close combat abilities of Mr. Fan. The attending physician can't believe what she's reading, from the medical record and charts of the patient. Dr. Yu Huichang had been doing the rounds for the ophthalmologist in the last 5 days, and she's sure that Li's condition was improving. She reviewed the medical chart of Li Wenliang. It shows his key clinical data and medical history such as demographics, vital signs, diagnoses, medications, treatment plans, progress notes, problems, immunization dates, allergies, radiology images, and laboratory and test results. But his record as of this morning indicates a deterioration of his health, with the development of an acute respiratory distress syndrome. Based on a posted article of the National Institutes of Health, ARDS, also known as acute lung injury or non-cardiac pulmonary edema, is a serious lung condition that causes low blood oxygen. In this type of illness, fluid builds up inside the tiny air sacs of the lungs, and surfactant breaks down. Surfactant is a foamy substance that keeps the lungs fully expanded, so that a person can breathe. These changes prevent the lungs from filling properly with air, and moving enough oxygen into the bloodstream and throughout the body. The lung tissue may scar and become stiff. She requested a second opinion on the case of the ophthalmologist. Dr. Xian Qianfang obliged. It can be expected that Li will have that ARDS, because of his infection with the SARS-CoV-2 virus. Looking at the latest medical chart, she put on a serious tone. But what perplexed me is the fact that it got worse overnight. I believe that there is a need for the conduct of additional diagnostic tests and procedures, such as a chest X-ray, CT scan and other tests for oxygen level. Handing back the charts to Dr. Yu, the Wuhan lung specialist insisted, a blood chemistry and heavy metal blood tests must be made, to ascertain chemicals in the blood, as well as measure the levels of potentially harmful metals in his body. I'm experiencing difficulty in breathing, and my oxygen saturation had dropped to 85%. Li complained of his condition to a friend. What are they doing to you? Ben Wei sounds very worried. He's been the bosom friend of Li in high school. I used to be connected to a mechanical ventilator, to restore blood oxygen levels so I can breathe easier. On my own. But since this morning, my doctor plugged me into a continuous positive airway pressure device, to help keep my airways open, by blowing air through a face mask. Is that enough? An architect by profession, he can't understand fully well the medical terms or procedures. I was given some antibiotics to treat the virus infection. I just had a lung fluid lab test, and CT scan in case of a new contagion. I don't want to tell Sweja of the new findings. She might worry too much. It would not be good for her pregnancy. It seems that Li is trying to reach up to Wei. Is there any problem with the way the hospital administration treat you? No, it's not that. From the time the People's Court sided with me, I've been treated with preference here. He was informed earlier that there is an ongoing investigation about an incident last night. In the ward CCTV, a nurse aide had injected something into his IV catheter. Upon verification of the patient's chart, there was no scheduled medication during that particular time. Lee looked at the screenshot of the result of his blood tests. Dr. Yu informed me that my blood contains a higher than normal amount of a substance that suppresses my immune system. Based on the result, an initial chemical analysis reveals that a methotrexate has been infused in his blood vessels. This is an antimetabolites medication or chemotherapy agent that is used to treat cancer, autoimmune diseases, ectopic pregnancy, and for medical abortions. According to medical researches, the presence of an immune system suppressant substance in a coronavirus case will aggravate the viral infection and may even hasten the death of the patient. That's basically the reason why my health condition went to critical. You tell the world about it when I'm gone. With great fear in his voice, Lee pleaded to his best friend. Due to pneumothorax and pulmonary fibrosis complications, Dr. Li Wenliang was sent to the hospital emergency room at around 7 o'clock in the evening. He has been plugged into a ventilator for a long period of time. The pressure and air volume of the ventilator forced gases to go through a small hole in the very outside of his lungs and caused that organ to collapse. The scarring and thickening of the tissue between the air sacs may have occurred within a few weeks of the onset of virus infection. This stiffens the lungs, making it even more difficult for oxygen to flow from the air sacs into the patient's bloodstream. In a live video feed, Sweja can be seen crying while the son sits beside her for comfort. Nearly 18 million people are watching in social media via live streaming of Li's status update. China Newsweek initially reported that according to an unknown source inside the emergency room, Li's heartbeat stopped at 9:30. Thousands of social media posts stated that the 2019 nCoV whistleblower had died. But the Wuhan Central Hospital released a statement explaining the medical condition of the world-renowned ophthalmologist. In the process of fighting the coronavirus, the eye doctor from our hospital, Li Wenliang, was unfortunately infected. He is now in critical condition, and we are doing our best to rescue him. The hospital reported that an extracorporeal membrane oxygenation was used to keep him alive. An ECMO, also known as extracorporeal life support, is a technique of providing prolonged cardiac and respiratory support to persons whose heart and lungs are unable to provide an adequate amount of gas exchange or perfusion to sustain life. Yet, the efforts of the health providers were unsuccessful. At around 2:58 in the morning of February 7, the WCH officially announced that Dr. Li Wenliang died. On September 11, 1941, the first stone for the foundation of the Pentagon was laid. With a project cost equivalent to $416 million at present value, the world's largest office building serves as the headquarters of the U.S. military. On the same date 60 years later, the nation experienced the first horrible attack to government facilities on U.S. soil, by a foreign enemy since Washington, D.C. was burned by the British during the War of 1812. At about 9:37 in the morning, as part of the September 11, 2001 attacks by jihadist forces, a domestic transcontinental passenger plane en route from Washington Dulles International Airport to California, was hijacked by a team of 5 Al-Qaeda terrorists, and targeted the military facility which symbolizes the U.S. Department of Defense and its leadership. Since then, during anniversary of the terror attack, an oversized star-spangled banner is hung in front of the repaired section of the western side of the building, the portion where the American Airlines Flight 77 crashed. The wall is also illuminated at night with blue lights, to signify the nation's resolve to sustain its war on terror. General Friedrich Clark parked carefully his GMC Sierra 1500 in the vast car park of the DoD headquarters. Making it a habit to walk the extra distance to the entrance as a form of exercise, he usually passes by the Pentagon Memorial, a monument that, according to former President George W. Bush, an everlasting tribute to the 184 souls who perished. The memorial comprises of an illuminated bench for each victim, arranged according to age in a landscaped 1.93-acre plot. Each bench is engraved with the name of the fatality. A shallow lighted pool of flowing water is positioned under each memorial. Facing the Pentagon's facade where the plane hit, the general executed a snappy salute to the concrete bench which bears an inscription, Lieutenant General Timothy J. Maude, USA. I kept the faith, cousin. General Clark murmured and continued his walk. Lieutenant General Maude was serving as the Deputy Chief of Staff for Personnel of the Army, and was in a meeting, when the hijacked plane crashed into his office. He was the highest-ranking U.S. military officer killed in the September 11 attacks, and the most senior American Army officer killed by foreign action since World War II. Foreign dignitaries and military officers who visits the Pentagon would always complain of the labyrinthine layout of the building, having a span of 28.7 acres with an additional 5.1 acres as a central courtyard, dubbed as Ground Zero on the presumption that it would be a prime target in a nuclear war. Being a Deputy Chief of Staff for Research and Development, General Clark is privileged enough to have his office at the third floor in the E-ring, passing through bypass corridors for a shorter route. Good morning, sir. He was greeted with a sharp clap of combat shoes and a salute, as he opened the door to his office. A West Point BAME-led graduate and a pilot of attack helicopters, Captain Kristen Haver does not have any letdown in military protocols. General, a black sealed envelope from Langley was personally handed to me this morning. It's in your desk. Her mechanical phrasing could mean a lot, either she's very formal in her words or irritated at something. A black encoded package from the Central Intelligence Agency means that its content is deemed to be seen only by the person to whom it's addressed. Opening it, much more pilfering what's inside, even if accidental, is a violation of military code of conduct, and will subject the concerned individual to a court-martial proceeding. Officially, the U.S. Army Personnel Office listed her current function as R&D Specialist for Unconventional Warfare. It's a fancy title adopted by the Human Resources Office, to indicate that her job is actually classified, not only as top secret but also as unknown. Do we have an update on PBN2? Sir, the feasibility study has been successfully verified, and defended before the technical committee. It is now waiting for the certification of approval by the USSF. The Project Black Nexus is a multi-stage program of the U.S. Space Force, that is primarily intended to bolster the cyber defense of the country, amidst the aggressive stances in digital and space military capability of Russia and China. PBN-1 was successfully launched by enhancing and unifying the direction of cyberspace operations across services. PBN-2 is a multi-billion project for space R&D to strengthen cyberspace capabilities, and integrates and bolsters cyber expertise of the Department of Defense. The Office of General Clark is in charge of the PBN program from its conceptualization, procurement, and implementation. Any updates from the top? Most of the time, the DoD is always bombarded with questions related to technical aspects of any issue happening around the globe. Sir, a memo from JCS was routed last night for a meeting by 1300 hours today at the tank. Reference, conceptualization of a response strategy for the coronavirus disease. Still in the planning stage, General Clark was earlier informed to prepare a concept paper for a proposed public-private partnership, to facilitate and accelerate the development, manufacturing, and distribution of vaccines, therapeutics, and diagnostics of the 2019 nCoV disease. You need to print 25 copies for the members of the JCS and their technical staff. Route through secured email the other authorized participants in the meeting. 2 sheets of paper were inside the black envelope, a handwritten note and a printed dossier. For your eyes only. Consider it urgent to review. Plan Harba. A rough scribbling using a blue pen on the first copy. The second one made his hands tremble. In nearly 2 decades of his stay in the United States, this is the first time that Ahmed sensed some fear. His worry is well founded. The implication to the threat of being exposed of his true personality is unbearable. Lounging in the favorite spot of his Vero Beach mansion's infinity pool, the cold water cannot relax the rapid heartbeat of anxiety. He has to think fast. All the efforts, time, money, and sacrifices of so many lives will just be wasted if he won't be careful. The Abu Musab al-Zarqa'i dossier was unearthed by the army from a CIA analysis. Abdul Najib reported to the Emir. A highly paid mole acting as secretary informed him earlier of a black package sent by the agency to the Pentagon. Or it could be the other way around. Ahmed exploded. How did the CIA got hold of the information in the first place? We planned it properly. The AQ ISIS operations officer tried to pacify his Emir. Abdul knows the temper of this man, especially to traitors. Everything happened according to plan. The operational execution and its aftermath were done with due regard of information security. It's obvious that there's a breach in security. The operations officer cannot argue further. What must be done is to mitigate, if not eradicate, the threat of exposure. You know what to do. Nem, Amir. I was only waiting for that order. Abdul does not need further prodding. He dialed a number and left immediately.
Thank you for watching. Write in the comments section for your request as to what book, usually from Project Gutenberg, you want us to feature in U-Book channel.
Click like to boost the rating of U-Book channel, make a comment for us for the improvement of our services, and share this video to your friends, with the copyright intact. Please click subscribe, and hit the bell button to be notified of new uploads from U-Book channel.